The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his remarks. There's one point in particular that he raised that was really good to hear. He spoke about how important it is to decriminalize cannabis, and that is something we agree on. However, the Liberals are stubbornly opposed to simply doing this. This government looked at legalization, and there was a recommendation that it be decriminalized. Yes, the government will be legalizing this within the next 10 months. However, the effects on young people are significant. It is young people who get criminal records because of their use of marijuana. And because of that, they can't buy homes, they can't find a job. It's very difficult for them to travel, and it affects the rest of their lives. So why not give them that opportunity now? Why not decriminalize now? With the Jordan ruling especially, we need to make sure that we get rid of the backlog in our court system. So I'm wondering if for all those reasons, my colleague wouldn't say that the government is going down the wrong road with respect to legalization, because it's refusing to go ahead right now with decriminalization.
Landbrook.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I'm honored to be in full agreement with my colleague. This is exactly what I was saying. That why not expedite the removal of a criminal record for those young people who were guilty of simple possession, so that they no longer have to fill in an application to an employer and say that they have a criminal record. That would be a very positive step. That would be peace, order, and good government, Madam Speaker. I think that's what we're all about. And use decriminalization as a first step, and take some time then to monitor how that affects young people, and start an education program saying that, hey, we're not saying that just because we remove your criminal record it's the right thing to do. We already know the risks for young people that already have mental health concerns, and that marijuana exacerbates it. Why put it in their hands without any kind of education program whatsoever? And why give it to 12-year-olds, for goodness sake, Madam Speaker? This is absolutely absurd.
Very brief question. The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Colorado Gazette has just published an article. It's been 5 years since they legalized, and they're seeing odor complaints in residential neighbourhoods, increased homeless rate, doubling of the number of drivers involved in fatal crashes who tested positive for marijuana, and in high school, the drug violations have increased 71%. So with all of these results from Colorado 5 years out, why does the member think that this government is rushing ahead to legalize against the advice of provinces, police, and Indigenous people?
Very brief answer from the member from Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Much to my colleague, and I will make a very brief answer. I'll capitalize on one point. You know, Madam Speaker, one of the experiences I had as a small business owner about 2.5 decades ago, I hate to admit that here, and we had a fleet of tow trucks in the region of Peel where we did the police towing, and at that time, with just alcohol, at Friday at 4 p.m., we knew that there was going to be an onslaught of drunk drivers on the road. Now we're going to exacerbate that with drug impaired. Madam Speaker, it's not the right way to go.
Resuming debate. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to congratulate my colleague on his speech. This was a speech that came from the heart. And I think our colleagues across the aisle should read that speech over and over again, because it was logical, it was common sense, and it really was stated with a view to truly protecting young people from this oncoming plague. Now, I'm proud, I wouldn't say proud to rise, I have to rise against this bill on legalizing marijuana coming from the Liberal government. Madam Speaker, Quebecers can count on the 11 Quebec Conservative members to represent them. We know that there's a majority of Quebecers who are against legalizing marijuana as brought forward by this government. The 11 Quebec Conservative members are unanimous in deciding that they will oppose this bill legalizing marijuana. Madam Speaker, allow me here to share my opinions about my members, opinions about this ill-conceived bill. Monday will be the third reading of this bill that will legalize marijuana by the 1st of July. The government's ultimate goal has been to pass this despite everyone's opinions. We will be against this bill, but the government will continue to oppose the opposition. It's going to ignore all the science and the collective will against this bill. It has showed, these studies have shown over and over again that the majority of the public is against this bill. Many associations, federations, institutions have expressed their opposition to this bill and to its expedited deadline. These are studies and opinions throughout Canada. Now, for the Prime Minister, experts' opinions, scientists' opinions, social stakeholders' opinions, and the opinions of police services have never carried any weight with him. The provinces and municipalities will have to take on the burden of the consequences of legalizing marijuana, and yet they weren't adequately consulted. They are not able to meet the expedited timeline set by the Prime Minister. And the Premier of Quebec has asked once again that this deadline be extended before this bill comes into force. Earlier this week, First Nations members also requested that that deadline be extended, and there was a categorical no from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was arrogant enough to impose a tax-sharing agreement which is unfair on the provinces and municipalities who will bear the costs of legalizing marijuana. The Prime Minister wants to simply shovel the costs, the health costs, onto the backs of the provinces and onto the backs of the municipalities, while taking in most of the revenue from the taxes on sales of marijuana.
Without a doubt, they need it to reduce their significant Liberal deficit. Let's talk about the facts. Many studies have demonstrated the negative impacts of marijuana on the human brain, especially people under 25 years old and vulnerable persons. Research also demonstrates that legalization will not eliminate organized crime, as the government claims. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, driving under the influence of drugs is already a problem on our streets. Legalization is simply going to amplify the risk of accident and death. Furthermore, Canadian police forces do not have the training and tools that they need to detect drivers that are at fault. And that's without including the lack of training when it comes to dealing with people who will be using drugs and the impact on workplaces and even the healthcare system. The Liberals' bill does not stand the test of fact. It does not nor does it respect common sense. The Liberals are not taking into account collective will. They are putting Canada in a delicate situation on the international scene. 3 international treaties will be broken if the government goes ahead with legalizing marijuana. Canada, Madam Speaker, will also be acting alone at the G20 and the G7 when it comes to legalizing marijuana. Never has a government legalized marijuana so quickly in the world. A government has never imposed so few restrictions on possession at home without setting out very precise requirements for public safety. It is for all of these reasons that the Quebec members of the Canadian Conservative Party on Monday are going to vote against this bill. And if I've just read the common letter that all the members of the Conservative Party of Quebec signed and published today in order to indicate what our position is with regards to this bill, which unfortunately will be passed because of the vast Liberal majority and the power that they have, in spite of all of the experts, the public, police forces, and common sense require. This letter was signed by the member for Richmond-Arthur-Masca, the member for Beauce, the member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis, the member for Beauport-Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans-Charlevoix, the member for Limoilou, Saint-Laurent, member for Saint-Laurent, the member for Montmagny, Ilac, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup, member for Lotbinière, member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. On this side of the House, we've taken a clear stand. The government wants to act in all haste, does not want to take the facts into account, and in our opinion, this bill is going to make major changes to our society as of July 1st, 2018. Madam Speaker, this week we had the opportunity to meet people on the American side, officials from the United States, who are also very worried about the impact of this bill at the border. The border with the United States is something that we need to take care of. It is something that we need to be very concerned about. And the objective is not complicated. We want to be able to cross the border as easily as possible. They're our biggest client. It's where Canadians go the most to relax. It's where they go to deal with our very first economic partner. The United States are paying careful attention to what we're doing here. Why? Because at the federal level in the United States, using marijuana is a crime. And whoever commits a crime on a territory other than the United States, who has committed that crime in a territory other than the United States and then goes to the United States, can be refused entry to the United States. They're not saying that to all Canadians. Imagine if somebody in your apartment block next door smokes marijuana just before trying to cross the border. Well, marijuana, one of the consequences is that the smell is very pungent. It's going to cling to everything around the person who smokes. And there's teams at the border. The canine squad is going to smell that. And maybe there's no drugs in the vehicle, but border officers are going to pull you aside. They're going to take you aside where you never want to go. They're going to search your vehicle. They'll search your vehicle, and then they're going to try to find where that smell is coming from, even if you don't have any with you. That's what's going to happen. And once the vehicle is searched and they ask you questions, have you ever used marijuana? And I sure hope you'll say no. Because if you say yes, Americans will have the right to turn you back. Too bad. You'll be refused entry for a certain time because you will have consumed marijuana, which means that you've broken a federal law in the United States and you'll be turned back. For Canadians who go to Florida, to Arizona, to California, that's not something that this government was hasty to say. It's something that has not been resolved with the Americans. For that reason, for all the other reasons, and especially for all the harm that this government is going to do to Canadian youth, I am going to vote against, as well as my other colleagues from Quebec, against C-45 this Monday. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member from Montarville. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to highlight the important point raised by my colleague, who took the initiative, and I congratulate him, to speak on behalf of his colleagues from Quebec and the position that they took. The position they developed and explained with regards to the position they've taken, how basically this is going to be a vote for criminal organizations and a product over which they have no control. Point of order, the member for Mégantic-L'Érable. I would like the member on the other side to retract what he just said. Never in this House did I mention I was going to be voting for maintaining organized crime. The honourable member from Montarville, does he wish to respond? My position is simple. By the contrary, we can do nothing but to conclude that if one votes against something, we vote for something else. I think perhaps we're getting into debate. The member for Mégantic-L'Érable has the right of reply to the question that the member from Montarville raised. Madam Speaker, you see just how twisted the Liberal government's arguments are when it comes to talking about legalization. Everybody says it's naive to think that organized crime is going to cease to exist because we're legalizing marijuana. Alcohol was in the hands of organized crime at the beginning of the 30s. Is there still organized crime today? The member has his answer right there. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe to change the angle of the debate, does my colleague not think that Canada, if this is a bill that is the first priority of the Liberals, would they, if we know that we're heading for legalization in mice, would they not have invested colossally, much more than what we currently see? We're talking about $7 million a year. And when we talk about Colorado, I keep repeating it, they've invested $40 million a year just for the state of Colorado for legalization. If we want to protect people, if that is the goal, to protect people, to make sure that we diminish the consumption of marijuana, is there not perhaps somewhat of a lack of ambition on the ambition side in terms of investing to make sure that there's more treatment, more prevention, that organizations on the ground have more resources as well to ensure that legalization is safe when it comes for public health? The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Larable. It's not just a lack of ambition, it's a lack of judgment. Because the reality is that the prevention program, to be effective, it needs to be done well ahead of legalizing a product. And this government is still launching calls for tender to find out who is going to be offering prevention programs. When the programs have to be ready, school will be over, marijuana will be legalized. That's the reality. And in a newspaper, the Colorado Spring Gazette, we found out that there was an investigation and they noted an increase of violations of the Drug Act, a 71% increase in schools since the passage of the Act. Suspensions went up by 45% because of problems linked to drugs among minors. That's the reality of Colorado 5 years after legalization. And we don't even have a quarter of the amount being invested in prevention. It's going to be worse here. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Brossard. Pardon me, Brossard-c'est-Lambert. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wonder if my colleague realizes that all those numbers went up because we can deal with it. We can't intervene when it's illegal. Did we do prevention when alcohol and cigarettes were allowed for legal sale? No. The member for Mégantic-Larable. What an absurd argument. When I asked the question among people in secondary school, I asked how many people drink? Yes, they did drink. Yes, we have to fight. We have to prevent the use of alcohol among young people. That government needs to act instead of just giving them one more opportunity to basically drug their brains. Why not invest in prevention of the use of drugs and alcohol to make sure that our young people are removed from all this temptation? Resume.